Okay, if you've been following the war in Myanmar, you've probably scratched your head wondering what exactly is China's game here. One minute, they seem to be propping up the military junta. The next, they're brokering ceasefires with the rebels who are fighting that same junta. It's confusing, right? It looks totally contradictory. But what if I told you it's not contradictory at all? What if it's all part of a single, ruthlessly logical plan? Let's get into it.
So let's just put the main question right out there. In this brutal, complicated civil war, with all these different groups fighting, whose side is China really on? Are they backing the military government, the State Administration Council, or are they secretly with the ethnic revolutionary groups?
Well, the answer is actually really simple, and it is the key to this entire puzzle. China is on its own side. It's not trying to pick a winner in this war. It is playing a long game to protect its own interests, no matter who's in power. And once you really get that, all of Beijing's moves suddenly start to make perfect sense.
To really understand China's strategy, you have to forget about ideology. Forget about alliances. You have to look at the cold, hard math of its own national interests. And it all really just boils down to three core non-negotiable pillars.
That's it, just three. Pretty much everything China does in Myanmar, every statement, every behind-the-scenes deal, every single piece of infrastructure it funds, it's all designed to protect these three specific things.
And here's what they are. First up, border security. China has this massive 2,000-kilometer-long border with Myanmar. The last thing it wants is chaos, a flood of refugees, or, and this is a big one right now, all those crime syndicates and scam centers spilling over into its Yunnan province. Stability there is paramount. Second, the Economic Corridor. This is huge. We're talking about the China-Myanmar Economic Corridor, or CMEC. It includes vital oil and gas pipelines that give China a strategic shortcut to the Indian Ocean, letting it bypass the choke point at the Malacca Strait. This is a multi-billion-dollar investment that they will protect no matter what. And third, of course, is political influence. Beijing needs Myanmar to stay firmly in its orbit, kind of like a buffer state, and to keep Western powers from getting a strategic foothold on its southern border. These three pillars, they are everything.
So think about it. If your one and only goal is to protect those three pillars, you're not going to bet everything on one horse winning the race, right? No, you're going to develop a strategy to deal with all the horses. And that's exactly what China's done. It's called all-side diplomacy.
Think of it less like traditional diplomacy and more like, well, geopolitical risk management. It's not about friendship or loyalty, it's about hedging your bets. You talk to the official government, you talk to the rebel groups, you talk to literally anyone who has the power to either threaten or protect your core interests. It's the ultimate playbook for a pragmatist.
And you can see this strategy playing out constantly. On the one hand, China provides the junta with diplomatic cover at the United Nations, gives them some limited military support. They use words like sovereignty to give the regime a little bit of legitimacy. But then, on the other hand, they have these incredibly deep economic and political relationships with the ethnic armed organizations, the EAOs, especially those along the border. And remember when those rebels launched Operation 1027 and were scoring major victories? Did China rush in to save the junta? Nope. It stepped in immediately to mediate a ceasefire. Why? To make sure its own pipelines and investments didn't get caught in the crossfire. That, right there, is all-side diplomacy in a nutshell.
But here's the billion-dollar question that could change the entire calculation. China's balancing act works pretty well as long as the conflict stays mostly in the border areas. But what happens if it doesn't? What if the war spreads and we see full-blown urban warfare in major cities like Yangon or Mandalay?
This scenario is basically Beijing's worst nightmare. A total collapse of the state, that's a direct threat to all three of its pillars. Widespread instability means no border security, no protection for that precious economic corridor, and no reliable political partner to talk to. If this were to happen, China's calculus would have to shift, and fast. They would almost certainly put immense pressure on the junta to get to the negotiating table for real. And they might even take direct action themselves, using their own people or friendly militias to physically secure their pipelines and economic zones.
So if you're part of the revolution, understanding China's fears and motivations isn't just an academic exercise. It actually creates a potential opening, a playbook. Instead of just seeing China as this monolithic supporter of the junta, you can see it as a pragmatic, self-interested power broker that can actually be influenced. The strategy for Myanmar's national unity government and its allies really comes down to three smart, targeted steps. It's all about proving to Beijing that a future, democratic Myanmar would be a better, more stable, and more reliable guardian of China's interests than the current military regime has been. This sentence right here,
This is probably the single most powerful thing the resistance can say to Beijing. It's like a magic phrase. It's a direct appeal to their biggest economic fear, losing those billions of dollars in investments. It cuts straight to the heart of what China truly cares about.
And we're not talking about empty promises here. The revolutionary forces can offer concrete, tangible guarantees. They can publicly pledge to protect the CMEC projects and those pipelines. They can commit, seriously, to cracking down on the border crime and scam centers, something the junta has pretty much failed to do. Basically, the goal is to make a compelling case that they are the ones who can deliver the stability that China desperately craves.
All right, the final two steps are all about smart diplomacy. First, political engagement. The national unity government has to open up channels to talk with Beijing. A great way to do that is by using some of the allied ethnic armies who already have established relationships and a degree of trust with China to act as a bridge. This starts to position them as a credible, viable alternative government in Beijing's eyes. And then, and this part is absolutely critical, they need to project neutrality. They have to reassure Beijing over and over that the support they're getting from the West is about one thing: achieving democracy for Myanmar. It is not about building a Western allied base to contain China. Calming that deep-seated geopolitical fear is absolutely essential to winning them over.
So when you put all these pieces together, it really reframes the whole conflict. You realize this isn't just a military fight for territory anymore. It's also a very sophisticated diplomatic chess match, a battle to win the tacit approval of the region's undisputed power broker.
So, here's the main takeaway. The crucial point to remember from all this is that while the courage of the fighters on the ground is absolutely undeniable, the final outcome of this war might just hinge on their ability to convince China that its interests are safer in their hands. If Beijing ever decides to pull its limited support from the junta and quietly push for a negotiated settlement, well, that changes the entire game overnight.
And that leaves us with the ultimate question, the one that will shape the future. Can Myanmar's revolutionary forces successfully make the case that a stable federal democracy would actually be a more predictable and more reliable partner for Beijing than the unstable, failing military dictatorship they're dealing with now? The answer to that question could very well decide the fate of Myanmar.